Hmm. All right, everybody, back again with chapter 2 for our mini lecture. Just reviewing some of the key concepts related to chapter 2. And this is where we'll really get into multicultural practice. And we have 4 dimensions here, or areas in which multicultural practice comes into play in our communication, and particularly working in the counseling or psychotherapy context. So dimension 1, being aware of our own assumptions, values, and biases. Yes, it's the foundation for multicultural work, is to understand where we're coming from. Dimension 2, understand the worldview of culturally different clients. So those that are different from us, and how those differences may impact communication. Number 3 dovetails nicely, is how to develop appropriate strategies and techniques to work with people who are different from us. And we'll see that we can use the micro skills and in ways that may be different based on the person that we're meeting with. So some skills may be used at certain times for one type of person, whereas if you're meeting with another type of person, the skills, utilizing the same pattern of skills may be uh, less useful or less impactful. And then 4th dimension, putting it all together in a multiculturally competent practice. So a little bit more on each dimension. The first one, again, is tuning into ourselves, building that self-awareness, understanding those identities and intersections of identities within ourselves, and how that may shape the way we communicate with others. We may, in this examination of ourselves, notice that we have certain biases or certain blind spots to other multicultural identities. And it's important for us to understand those so that we can adjust our communication accordingly. Okay, now the second dimension was tapping into clients' worldviews and identities, right? So once we understand ourselves, we can look to the other. How do clients see themselves and the world around them? Worldviews vary significantly, even across people who have the same identities or belong to the same cultural groups. It's important as an interviewer or counselor or psychotherapist to not impose our own worldviews on clients. And we'll see that if we do so, it usually ends in not so great communication. And that might be cases where clients won't come back to a counseling session with us if we're too aggressive with our worldviews. Some traditional approaches may be inappropriate or ineffective with some groups. So traditional approaches, we can go back to this idea of theoretical orientation. And I like the example of some of the older Western counseling theories. Think Freud, very in tune with this idea of blank slate, right? Where the psychoanalyst or the counselor or psychotherapist in effect was to be a blank screen or slate where clients would be able to project different notions on them, and it would all be tapped into the unconscious of things. But when we look at work with clients from, let's say, the Latinx culture, if we have that very kind of neutral blank slate approach with them, they might see us as cold. and unnerving. And so they may not want to come back to us for a counseling session if we take that approach. And then the last point on this slide, continuing learning worldviews through academic study, reading, and lived experience. Right? Being lifelong learners. Dimension 3, so thinking about intervention strategies and techniques and how multiculturalism and competence intersect with that. Myself, so you can see the slide. Okay. So expand skills in traditional strategies and newer methods. I just provided the example of Freudian psychoanalytic theory and therapy and the blank slate approach. And so in work with diverse populations, you could still use some psychoanalytic ideas pertaining to like personality development and maybe how the change process happens, but your approach in those micro skills, like the active listening, the nonverbals, the questions you ask and how you ask them, can all be tuned in to the multicultural identities of the client. All right, and using it in a respectful manner. So working with clients from maybe Asian descent clients or Latinx descent clients, there may be a heightened focus on on respect and role. So as a counselor or therapist would be someone who has a lot of authority in your role, and so them having more respect toward you based on their notions of what a professional is like, and you being able to manage and navigate that to your best ability without obviously using power and privilege to disenfranchise the client. So being respectful to their cultural practices, their expectations about the counseling process. Building awareness of cultural biases and testing instruments, assessment processes, and as such. We won't be covering assessment really throughout this course. It's sort of a higher level skill and approach. If you're taking this class and trying to understand if you might want to become a counselor or psychologist, psychotherapist in the future, you'll definitely, take more courses on assessment. And but even in that realm where we're going to be thinking about multicultural identities and overlaps. And let's see. Sorry, it's hard for me to see it and do the controls. Yeah, let's skip to the next slide. So being culturally intentional is the first point under Dimension 4, which is putting it all together, that self-awareness, the knowledge and the skills, making it meaningful in your actions and what you actually do with clients. So using cultural competence in the interview, as well as cultural sensitivity. We have another model here. It's called the respectful model. I liked it, so I included it. It's an acronym. So each letter in the word respectful connotates an idea. So R would be attending to clients' religion and spirituality. E would be economic and social class or background. S would be sexual identity. P, personal style and education. E, ethnicity or racial identity. C, chronological lifespan, status, and challenges. T, any type of trauma experiences or crisis. F, familial background and history. And U, some type of unique physical characteristic that might include disability or ability status, how they see their physical appearance, skills, and abilities. Something important to mention here, and I'm going to go ahead and slip it under the S for sexual identity, is also to tune into gender identities of clients, their pronouns and the preferred pronouns, understanding how they see that for themselves. Let's keep moving. Okay, wellness assessment. These are some nice categories that I also included and I wanted to highlight in this mini lecture. Thinking about the different types of self And we're going to go into each one here. The essential self, so kind of like the foundational, I guess like is what it is, essential self, right? That the others are more, the other types of selves are working around. So we have spirituality as part of that. And as a counselor or psychotherapist, we'd be thinking about how might you ask questions about these different areas, spirituality being one, gender identity, sexual orientation, cultural identity, what kind of cultures we have here, not only race and ethnicity, but maybe there's other elements to that as well. Self-care, how individuals care for themselves, also important. Social self, so we're getting into the social self here. Unsurprisingly, we're going to be asking questions about friendships, their love lives, and not only in like a romantic sense, but also in a familial sense here. The coping self, or how clients might use leisure activities, right, to feel better. Stress management, ways that clients might engage in those things, also related to coping. Self-worth, a sense of self-esteem for clients, so asking questions about that. And realistic beliefs about how they see themselves. Under this here would be expectations and personal expectations they might hold. A creative self, this is fun. So the ways individuals think, how positive thinking can overlap with this, and obviously helping clients. And then emotions, the role of negative emotions, positive emotions. We have a whole lecture just about emotions later on in the course. And more on the creative self, the role of control, work, and even humor. Well, what makes you laugh? Okay, we're at the last slide. Physical self, exercise, and nutrition. Obviously, in psychotherapy and really psychiatry, there's a focus on the mind-body experience. And so I really like how the physical self is included in this, and how the physical nature of the person definitely interacts with the mental nature and vice versa. All right, that's it for Chapter 2 mini lecture. And you'll see me again in Chapter 3 and 4 in the next module.